When life happens, plans need to change. Shaping Change, hosted by certified financial planner Ross Marino, is dedicated to helping financial advisors better serve their clients when life takes those unexpected turns.
Welcome to the Shaping Change Show. Today, I am joined by Reese Harper, CEO of Elements and founder of Dentists for Advisors. Hello, Reese.
Hey, how's it going, Ross? Good to see you again, man. I hope a life in Wilmington's treating you well today.
It sure is. Last night, I was actually at a concert, so I'm a little hungover, which is only based on my age because all I drank was water. So you know you're getting old, right?
Hungover, yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah, that's right. Hungover just because I wasn't in bed by 9. So, but I'm doing okay with that. So we're
Great.
good. Yeah, a little exercise this afternoon. I'll be back in business.
Well, thanks for having me on, man. You've got a lot of good insight into the industry. I'm excited to share some thoughts that I think we both are passionate about today. So I'm excited.
It seems like we've both seen some of the similar problems that are out there, and we're trying to attack it from different ways. How about we start with you giving some history of how you got to this point, some of the problems that you saw, and why you created Elements to begin with?
Yeah, in my RIA, I started an RIA in 2007 and built that till 2020. And I was working with dentists around the US. That RIA is still running today. I'm still on the board and the largest shareholder there. I really enjoy the business of personal financial advice. I'm inspired by the young advisors that are working there, and we're adding hundreds of clients a year, and it's a great business. But during the process of working in that market, which is we'll call it pre-retiree accumulator, business owner, entrepreneurial market, because all of our customers, not all of them were business owners, half of them were, associate dentists that worked for a business owner, and the other half were the owners. We had different service models for each, but we just targeted this one niche. I started realizing that most of them were focused on like putting a Monte Carlo simulation in front of them, or a goals-based forecast. Like it just didn't matter enough to them. It wasn't compelling for them to sit and look at a future set of cash flows and then feel good about it. What they were interested in were more present day emotional challenges that they were facing with their money, and functional jobs they were trying to get done now. Like, how much liquidity should I keep, around versus put in my qualified plans? What should my estate plan look like so it's not too complicated, but that it is at least addressing some basic asset protection issues? Or how much insurance should I have? Or should I pay off this debt? Or, is this interest rate reasonable? Like, there's just a ton of things that we call at Elements, which is the company I founded after my RIA. We call these jobs to be done, financial jobs that clients are trying to get done. And there's hundreds of them that just appear as people's net worth and income changes. Like, there's these jobs that just appear, and they appear based on, usually on average, it's, not just personality driven. They're functional because someone's net worth or income level like triggers a particular planning need. And the current software market, was really only addressing one problem, one job to be done, which was when you get really close to retirement, or are in retirement, and you want to get hyper precise with modeling your cash flow. They're very good at that. But turns out that those tools were built for advisors, not for the client, and these tools originated, in the early 2000s, when the game that advisors were playing then was stealing assets from other advisors. Like, how am I going to get someone to switch? And so you have detailed performance calculations and because, if I show 8.24% return, then I'm going to beat the other guy's historical IRR that's showing in the client's performance report. And I'll show my client how I can even do better. Look, you idiot, you've been at a 60-40 portfolio. If we put you at a 70-30 portfolio, we are going to crush it, and you'll have $2 million more. And then the clients, we couldn't get people to switch because people love their people so much. Yeah. They stay with their advisors. So these tools were I think the origin really was, how do we get people to switch and bring their money to us? And they were less about emotional, like living in the present moment, enjoying life, like life planning, George Kinder-esque, or, Amy Mullen stuff at Money Quotient, or stuff that you talk about, Ross. It's these like life planning issues that are so important psychologically to people's well-being. Those were not part of what the software was designed to help support. And so I started like building a planning process in my RIA to address these emotional needs and the functional jobs, and have the conversation always be focused on today as opposed to the future. And then using some simple ratios to paint a picture of the future that isn't super concrete, so people don't get too indexed on precision. So for example, one of the indicators we use is called total term, and it's net worth divided by current annual spending. And we say, hey,
nice.
When that score is, big enough, like maybe in the 20s or in the 30s, that's going to be like quite a bit of money. And we could start talking about, whether work is optional. But we don't say like you can retire or when you're going to be done, because most people like should be focused on enjoying their work, like whatever their work is. Like if they don't enjoy it now, like change, right? Like you should enjoy your job, and you should enjoy your job in your 70s and your 60s and your 50s. If you want to quit when you're 40, that's fine. But like you should enjoy work and enjoy being done with work. Like these should both be enjoyable things. We don't have to be miserable working and then happy when we're not working. We can be happy working and happy when we're not. And so we don't like to get super precise with our retirement and wealth optional kind of conversations. We just like to get proximate. And then once we get out to that place and the job comes up where you have to say, I've got to be super precise now. Well, we can do that on the back end. Like we have the tools to be able to do that. But to show the client a hyper precise picture of the future that is wrong the minute they walk out of the office, to me is just like, it's the wrong message that we're sending. And so Elements was born inside of this RIA, working with accumulators that are looking at their future, trying to paint a picture of what things are important, the rate at which they save money, the rate at which they spend money. So we take all of their cash flow and their asset mix and their risk profile and their, insurance and estate issues. And we just say, here's some key indicators that tell us if you're doing well in this area, and we're going to track them over time. And then the pace at which you're moving, the pace of your progress, will trigger us to decide if we need to make adjustments. But this is about monitoring progress and change. It's not about painting a picture of the future, selling you on that future, and then having you pay us for a plan. This is about engaging us as your advisor and in an ongoing process that can be paid for through a subscription or through AUM. And then we will, carry this to the finish line. So basically, Ross, if I were to sum up how Elements was born, it was born inside of this problem, right? And we found that it was better to focus on the present moment, focus on the current behavioral change that would optimize the future. Because I think people generally want to just feel good now. And that's what they want. They want to feel good now. And sometimes that involves painting a little bit of a picture of the future. But it rarely involves painting a hyper precise view of the future. And I think sometimes when we're too precise about the future, it makes people be too comfortable in the present about their current behaviors. And then we lose the control of that behavioral change that we want to affect, right? If you model that someone's at a 98% complete rate on their Monte Carlo forecast, that might be true. But if that person has a 5% gross savings rate on their income, I still don't know if that's an appropriate savings rate for someone making, let's say, $250,000 a year. Now, if they're making $100,000 a year and they have a 5% savings rate, maybe I'm fine, and maybe I'm happy with that based on the fact they got 5 kids or something. But every person has scores that if we had enough data in the industry, which we don't yet. I mean, I've got nearly 1,000 samples now of endpoint data, and in Elements, we're trying to aggregate all of this data to create benchmarks and comparisons and ratios that actually can set some standards for the industry that we haven't had before. Like, what should a savings rate be for someone who makes 100,000? across 600 samples, what's the bell curve? What's the median? Where are the fringes? What factors affect savings rates? Is it state? Is it family size? Is it debt to income ratio? What should someone's mortgage debt to income really be in order to have a savings rate that's optimal? There's just so many things that we could do to actually give advice that affected positive change. But we're doing a lot of forecasting and investment modeling, and that's just not where we can actually have the greatest effect. So anyway.
So I've seen a lot of people transition to retirement. This would be clients, people around me. Even as they go into the retirement, this is an incredibly short-term time frame, meaning I'm about to retire or I just retired and here's what I want to do. So it's not even a long-term goal. It's here's what I want to do. And then 6 to 12 months later, we find out that actually wasn't what they wanted to do.
Changes.
So, right. How on earth do I, as a financial planner, have this conversation of 20 years from now, try to paint a picture when even the people that are right in the middle of that next stage, that goal, I'm going to retire and do X, to a certain extent, they're not even qualified to say what they're going to enjoy doing 6, 12 months down the road. How on earth can I do that for somebody 20 years from retirement?
Precisely. And I use our system in retirement. We have a lot of dentists in retirement as well. And I still use elements in retirement for that same reason. I think the reason it originated in the pre-retiree community is just because the next generation is like literally completely uninterested in Monte Carlo forecasting and cash flow simulations. But in retirement too, I've found that the thing that I care about the most are our several key ratios in our Elements scorecard. Every time I sit down with a retiree, I'm looking at their liquid term score, their qualified term score, their real estate equity score, any business assets, it's called business term, and then their total term. And all I'm looking is at where are they at quarter by quarter, because that tells me how fast their net worth is declining. It tells me how fast they're withdrawing assets, the pace at which they are declining their wealth. I'm interested in the pace at which someone is moving. That's what is, that's my focus, because that way I can sort of caution people, or I can encourage them to spend more. I know like where someone's imbalanced and where someone's not in terms of their asset mix and how much pressure I'm going to be putting on a particular block of assets. But I can get to that conversation with this element system that I've developed with my team. I can get to those answers within like 30 seconds instead of like the amount of inputs I have to do to create a precise model in eMoney or Right Capital or Money Guide Pro or any forecasting tool. Like it's just a heavier lift. It's a heft, to get to that point. And clients are not even engaging with these systems. So half the time I don't even know if I got accurate data because the client doesn't even engage with the portal. And so for us, it was all about getting the client to engage and own one thing, one simple thing, like see this list of assets and debts. Is it right or not? Is there anything here that I do not know about? That's all I need you to do. But I need you to do it like once every 3 months. And I need you to confirm it with me by clicking little green check boxes to tell me that, yes, this looks right to you. Because I can't know everything all the time. And that's what Elements focus is for the client engagement piece is we created a really simple mobile application that's native designed. It's not a website. It's actually native code. So it feels really smooth and easy, and it doesn't ever like stop and not load, and it's not ever broken. And they don't have to log in with their traditional kind of login process. It's all using, the latest kind of native code, because even seniors, they love, Facebook and Instagram. They can pull up something and hit buttons as long as it's simple. And so that's all we've done is created a really simple quarterly review process where the client every quarter just confirms their data. And that way, and then in my system, I know who's confirmed data, who has not confirmed data, whose data is aging. If there's a data point that's out of date that I can't trust because it's a manual entry, my system's telling me this is an aging data point, and it'll let me ping the client and say, hey, you forgot. And I'm training clients to maintain their own personal financial statement. And that to me is just going to change the efficiency of planning. It'll allow advisors to add so much more value in these conversations, get down to the heart of the matter, the present conversations, as opposed to like, talking about data for the first 15, 20 minutes of a meeting. So anyway.
So we're always getting questions of what's going to happen in the future, right? I know you don't have a crystal ball, Ross, but what do you think? People love those questions. We don't like uncertainty. So the brain wants to know, what do you think 10 years, 20 years down the road? Am I on track? Even though those variables are going to change. How do you use elements, or how do you balance the client's desire to want some type of certainty in the future, or as close as they can, with, I actually don't know what's going to happen in the future. However, I know these are the things that we need to do today. Let's just focus on that. How do you do that?
So I pull up their scorecard and I tell them, hey, this total term score, net worth divided by spending, we're going to have to get that to be, north of 20, probably, to have a shot at really being comfortable. And if all of your net worth is in your house, that's going to be kind of complicated. So a 20 score net worth divided by spending would be possible to retire and be comfortable, but probably not, you're not going to be passing on a lot of wealth to your family, right? A 20 score is essentially saying spending is 5% of net worth. That's the same thing as saying a 20 score. So I think it's possible, but 5% of net worth is still requiring you to pull liquidity from a primary residence. That's going to leave their property with some debt on it. So that's not ideal, but I don't like to discourage people and say it's not possible. It's like, dude, you had 20 years worth of net worth piled up, and you want to just cut your living expenses slightly, you're going to be able to make it. But if you're at a 10 score, 10% of your net worth in spending per year, that's not going to really fly. And I always just say, if you're at a 30 or a 40, if you're at a 40, that's 2.5% of your net worth going to spending. If you're at a 30 score, that's 3.3% of spending from your net worth. I just paint that picture. And I say, right now you're at a 7. Last quarter, you were at a 6.5. Every quarter, we're kind of moving forward, and we'll see where we're going to end up. But hey, anything that ends up happening, it's going to be great. You're going to be, whether you're at a 20 or a 40, we can make life amazing. So don't stress it too much. Just know that the bigger we get your net worth relative to your spending, because that again reinforces that spending is the critical factor here. Always reinforcing spending. Spending's the factor, spending's the factor, spending's the factor. And that way they never really think it's all about investment growth. And they never always think it's about accounts that I'm managing. It's about debt reduction. It's about investment growth. It's about asset growth. It's about business growth. It's about real estate appreciation. It's all of these things. And then once they have that general picture, they're okay. And then I reinforce the current behaviors. Your savings rate is 14%. For someone making $300,000 a year, I typically see someone at 21 to 22% of gross income. That means we need to increase your savings deposits by $1,500 a month in order to be at our median client average. I have 400 samples to look at here, and I know that you're below the median by 6%. You don't have to increase it, but the likelihood of you being at an early retirement at your current savings rate is somewhat low, given the fact that everyone else is savings rate is 21. Whatever else the middle of the pack is doing, you're not. So do you want to increase that, or are you comfortable with just the risk that puts on your future? And they say whatever they want to say. I really don't care, Reese. I'm living in the present moment, and I don't really care when I retire. Okay, that's fine. Or yeah, I want to beat everybody. How much would it take me to go to 22%? Right? And
overachievers.
Yeah. And then I'm telling you, Ross, this is what works, man. People don't care about financial planning. They don't care. But they do care about being compared to their friends. They care about keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
So what am I doing? I'm giving them keeping up with the Joneses, but I'm giving them the things that they should be keeping up with. Your savings rate, your burn rate, your debt to income ratio, your liquidity, your qualified term, your total term. These are the things you should be keeping up with the Joneses on, not the size of the house. Now, will I compare your house to other people's houses in the database and say, hey, for someone at 27, you have 2 homes and your house is, 40% more expensive than anyone else in the database. Like, yeah, if I had to do that to help them see, and I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to be like the subjective bad guy that's like, well, it's just my opinion that you're not saving enough. That was never like motivating enough for my customers. They always wanted to know, well, what's Tom doing? And I'm like, well, I can't tell you what Tom's doing, but I do have a sample that Tom is included in. And here is a data set. Both you have to opt in to be included in that data set, but I'm going to now show you how Tom is doing on average, not specifically, but on average. And then they can say, well, whatever Tom's doing, I want to beat him. And then that's just a way we get positive behavioral change. So if you run an ad on the internet today and say, like, especially if you have a niche market. I mean, if you have a niche market and you can say like, I can show you what other people just like you are doing because I'm dentist advisors. I mean, it's just like, it's a feeding frenzy for onboarding, man. And that's the ticket. Like that's how we get the population to actually care about financial planning. They will not care if we talk about it in holistic health terms. They don't care about that. I mean, they do, but I care about that deeply. Like this whole thing for me is about holistic wellness ultimately, but they only care about a couple of things. And one of the things they care about is how am I really doing compared to other people? And am I doing good enough? Am I doing good enough? And so we have to reinforce that with some benchmarking and some data, or we're not going to get positive change. So think about Elements as a scorecard for your client that then gets compared to everyone else's scorecard. And then you as an advisor can rank and compile and contrast. We're not going to put the scores in front of the client. We're only going to put the scores in front of the advisor. And then the advisor can determine how to translate that to the client through some PDF reports and some nice, visuals. I think shouting too loud the benchmark comparisons to the client will result in some bad takeaways, negative emotions, not being able to interpret the information properly. Like maybe a higher savings rate's not appropriate for a given person. Like maybe they should be below the median, given a set of circumstances that are more appropriate for their goals. But I'm going to give you the data, the advisor, and I want you to be able to be empowered with data. So if you work with a dentist and you live in Wilmington, North Carolina, and you want to compare your dentist to my dentist at Dentist Advisors, now you have, 500 plus samples that probably really line up really close to your demographic. And you can say, well, I'm going to go deeper than dentists. I'm going to go dentists plus dentists that make 200 to 220 a year, because this guy makes 220. And people that are 36 and people with 2 kids. Are there anyone in the database? Well, that might take the sample size down to like 30. But that is really powerful to be able to like advise someone on their exact situation with people just like them and say, I think, of course, your personal goals are always going to trump it. Okay. Of course, your personal goals are going to trump anything that anyone else is doing. We want to focus on the client. But how can you motivate behavioral change if you don't have any evidence to show the person that to help motivate their change? If it's just your opinion, they're just not going to follow that with the same amount of fidelity. So I saw Dentist Advisors clients on average go from a gross savings rate that was in the low teens, 14%, roughly on average, which is still pretty good to get your entire clientele to have a 14% savings rate. I saw that climb to north of 21%. And that was just really over several years of just reinforcing benchmark comparisons. So I don't feel like I'm not trying to manipulate people. I'm just trying to light up the part of their brain that gets them motivated to make change. And I think it's a worthwhile exercise.
Well, you're answering a question that people have, and they can give their disclaimer. The disclaimer I'll give you up front, which is, people are unique. I'm unique. I'm not like everybody else. They're not like me. However, I need to know, Reese, what people like me are doing in general, right?
Yes.
So I do want to know a benchmark. And yes, I have extenuating circumstances. So my savings rate might be a little lower right now, but at least I understand that. And I'm okay with that, as opposed to feeling guilty for some reason because I'm not at that average savings rate. What are other people doing? So I think it's a great talking point. Let's pivot that into the situations we come into. So our practice is a shaping change practice. A lot of advisors, if they're getting referrals, it's because life happened. Something happened in someone's life. There is a life event. Life happened. Plans need to change. They reach out to a financial planner for a financial advisor. This is so focused on today. It seems like a perfect fit for that type of world. Tell me how you would leverage elements in a transition type practice where life happened, plans need to change, and the client's thinking, now what?
Yeah. Well, first thing I do is I want to educate the client on the things that matter. So I educate them on the scorecard and these key indicators, so I'll invite them in with a mobile app. Even before they become a customer, I have them just pre-fill out their data slightly during the onboarding sequence. They just hit a plus button and it adds net worth items and it starts calculating the scores and they start seeing their scores populate and light up. I've told them, I'm going to look at this scorecard. I'm going to analyze where I think you're at overall from a financial health perspective, because I've seen hundreds of people like you, and I know what balanced looks like. I know what maybe a challenging circumstance looks like. I know what cash flow should look like and not look like. And I know where, what wealth looks like and what lack of wealth looks like. And so the client's then expecting to get some kind of scorecard, some grade, I'm an A here, I'm a B here, I'm a C here, or I'm a D here. And then once I get them into the system and they get their scorecard populated, then I'm developing an initial plan, I'm making recommendations, and then I'm monitoring each of those elements on a regular basis. And my system's telling me it's time to talk about this, time to talk about this, time to talk about this. And so I'm just engaging the client with these micro interactions. Like this morning, one of my clients happens to be charitably inclined. And there's a trigger that I'm looking at to tell me, since if I have charitably inclined clients, then at some point prior to the end of the year, I want to make sure I look at the capital gains taxes inside of their portfolios and determine if it makes sense to do gifting, or if they're going to pay with cash this year, because maybe I don't have enough gain in the portfolio to make it worth donating. Well, that's the type of thing that the client really values. And it's something that technology can help assist with quite a bit, like applicable here, not applicable here. Now that feature that I'm just describing exists in beta on my spreadsheet right now, not in the app as it currently exists. But that's an example of something that we are building. I mean, we're only 5 months old right now, and all of the next actions are kind of where we're innovating. So given the client data and given all the benchmarking, what's the next action for this customer? And we think technology can surface those things to the advisor better than the advisor trying to figure it out with hundreds of people and hundreds of relationships. Like it's hard to remember every next action to take with every customer. And it's going to take some time. Like that's going to be the better part of next year, like programming, using all of our advisors to sort of tell us, based on their area of expertise, like what should the triggering function be here? Like if someone inputs stock options, what triggers should be happening during the year, both to the client in a native prompt and to you as the advisor, and what custom prompt do you want them to receive, and what generic prompt do you want them to receive? Because you don't want it to be like custom prompting all the time. It starts to get annoying. But system prompts are also not as heavy as action oriented as a personalized prompt with the advisor's face on it. So when I say a prompt, imagine a push notification coming to your device and the client looking at it and saying yes or no. Like, hey, just want to do a quick family update. Like if someone has said we're not having kids anymore, then I'm not going to keep prompting them with the kids update. But every year or two, like I've got to be able to really make sure that I'm not missing a child. I've had dozens of clients whose tax returns don't reflect the child they've had in the last couple of years, and their CPA didn't know, and I didn't know. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, you got a kid? Okay. Well, that's a very simple example, but like the system generically, if it sees family demographic data, can say, hey, just so that Reese is aware for tax planning, family still look good. Good. And then are you going to change this ever? Any anticipated future family changes? No. Okay, that prompt's never going to come back. But like, we have to build essentially like a CRM system that integrates with a client portal that has planning capability that is all in this unified, world, because like we can't keep using our CRM for one thing and then using our planning software for another thing and then using a client portal for another thing. It's just these systems that it's hard to get them to work in tandem because they were all built for different purposes. They were built for specific jobs that from 15 years ago that may not exist today. In today's world, the next generation, I mean, JD Power and Accenture they're just saying everyone wants holistic planning. Most of these next generation is looking for like alternatives to AUM models. Like they're saying, look, can I pay subscription? Like, what does the subscription economy look like? We're going to have to start delivering planning as our primary value prop. People like you've been doing it for 20 years, but most of the industry is still using software that's built on an investment value prop. And that investment value proposition is getting compressed, not eliminated, but compressed by Wealthfront and Vanguard Advisor Services and Betterment Direct. That like the client can get good asset management, at least the mass market can. People with 250 to 1.5 million, they can get good investment management from technology. So you got to deliver more than that. And that's where we just don't have technology to use to help advisors scale advice. We just have tech that's used to model investment and forecasting in the future. And so that's what is just so fun to work on. And all of our customers are helping us architect this neural network of benchmarking and next actions that hopefully will help us innovate the future of advice a little bit more. And I hope other firms, other software providers continue to do that too, because I think that's where the future is headed. And we can make more money as an industry, and we can add more value, and we can unlock planning for parts of the market that couldn't afford it before. So we can say, shoot, if you're willing to pay $200 a month and do all the data entry and maintain all your tasks and do all this stuff, that makes me $500 an hour. So I'll interact with you through our system. And hey, if you want access to private like wealth management, it's an AUM fee, and we'll eventually wipe out your subscription fee. And now you're going to qualify for even more services. There's just ways to get down market if we can get technology to do some of the dirty work. Anyway.
Sounds good. Let's go with the last question.
Okay.
Magic wand. If you could wave a magic wand, change anything in the world, what would you do?
You know what, Ross? This is a great question. I would probably magically give everyone the ability to be able to have a conversation as opposed to a debate. I would want humans to be able to listen and love instead of argue their point. Be more open, right? And be less judgmental. If people could learn to have a conversation instead of have a debate, instead of like proving their point, but just learning and listening, I think we would probably have a lot less violence and warfare, and it would result in a lot better world that would solve problems faster, and we would get to places a lot quicker. So I'd probably say teach people the ability to have a conversation and listen, understand versus judge and argue their point and debate. So we don't have that skill very well right now in our government. We don't have it very well in our communities, in our, even in our spiritual communities. We're kind of, it's still like us versus them. We're all in tribes in some way. And I would think that would be like a pretty healing, and it would accomplish a lot. And I know the close second would be, solving some global disease, or, but I would pick the conversation side because I think that will actually save more things if we could learn to do that. So it's my thought.
Great way to finish. Reese, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thanks, Ross.
Thank you for listening to Shaping Change with Ross Marino. This show is for general information purposes only and is not intended to provide recommendations or advice. Speak with a legal, tax, or financial advisor before making any decisions. Past performance references are historical and do not guarantee future results. Visit rlsummit.com to learn more.